So we've gotten a bunch of information about Frosthaven from PAX Unplugged, where Tom Vassell interviewed Isaac Childress, and we got to see all about Frosthaven. So here's what you need to know. So first of all, Frosthaven is an independent game. You don't have to have played Gloomhaven, but the storyline does take place after the Gloomhaven story ends. So if you don't want spoilers, you might want to play Gloomhaven first. The other is that it is just as big, over 100 scenarios, 16 new characters. There's a ton of content there. Now, the combat system is staying the same. If it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. So that does allow, which is great, characters from Gloomhaven, characters from Frosthaven, they are cross-compatible in each game. So you can bring them over. There's even a way to bring items over from Gloomhaven to Frosthaven, but it's within the lore of the game, so it has to be imported from the town of Gloomhaven and go through some passage to Frosthaven. And so there's some things in there that are allowed or not allowed. It's a little unclear so far, but it seems like a very cool way to handle bringing items from your old campaign into the new one. One thing though is that the characters of Frosthaven are going to be more complex to play. Some of them even come with their own character reference card, which you use to understand the character and their specific mechanics. So let's dive into the 6 that we know about and talk about those mechanics as well. Now the first character I'm going to talk about is the Necromancer. One thing to know with the Necromancer is that it has summons, and some of you who've played Gloomhaven may have felt that summons were a little underpowered. One of the key changes is that summons have been buffed a little bit, and so you'll see with the Necromancer character how the summons are non-loss undead summons, which means that you can play the card multiple times to have multiple summons. The summons do cost life to play, which just feels like a great matchup of mechanics and theme going on there. The next new character is Banner Spear. This is a mainly melee attacking character with something they're calling formation attacks. And so these are the hex diagrams, which include a green hex. Those are your allies, which is a very interesting looking mechanic where the combat and the card depends on where your allies are. So this will introduce some new movement techniques and new ways to move around the dungeons as you're playing. Now a nice thing is she's got a lot of cards that help her summon, which those summons can be part of the formation, where they can independently make these attacks. The next character to talk about is the Blink Blade. This is a character with its own special rules card, because the character manipulates or changes time. So before a round begins, you need to declare if you're going to be fast or slow. And depending on what you choose, your cards have slow and fast options. The initiative on each of the cards is split into 2 choices as well, based on the slow or fast choice that you make at the beginning of the round. Now to balance this out and make sure that you play both fast and slow, there is a counter that starts on the card, and declaring fast, you remove a counter, declaring slow, you add a counter. So you can't just stay fast all the time. This is another unique character with its own special rules card. Now the high concept of Gemma Nate is, you can see from the character image itself, 2 heads. You're essentially playing 2 characters, which is why the starting hand size 7/7 means you have 2 decks of 7 that you're choosing from. So at the beginning of each round, you have to select one state. You can only play the cards from one state. There are cards that allow you to change state, and there's an indicator for that. Now one of the states or forms is more focused on melee attacks, and the other is focused on range. Now early speculation is showing that with these 2 separate decks, you'll have a ton of stamina, be able to last a long time because of how the game is played, where you're running out of cards and only get to play if you have cards left. Gemma Nate seems to have the highest chance to last the longest. Next up is the Deathwalker. The Deathwalker also has its own special rules card. The focus of this character is to create shadows, and you can create up to 5 according to the special rules card. Typically you can create shadows through killing monsters as well, and the shadows enhance your attacks through various forms depending on the card that you use. Moving on to the Drifter, you'll notice that this character has a lot of persistent effects. And there are specific cards like Relentless, which allow you to move the character token of 2 persistent abilities back 1 space so that they last longer and can apply longer as well. That's the information we have on characters Now, remember, there's also 10 additional characters that you'll be able to unlock as you progress through the campaign of Frosthaven. So there's a whole bunch more to imagine and to be expecting once you start getting your hands on the game. Another new element is that, based on the storyline, you are mercenaries that were hired to help protect the town of Frosthaven. Now, the town itself has been damaged and broken, and you can, through the campaign, build up the town, rebuild some of the defenses, or upgrade some of the abilities to find new craftsmen to build things for you. You can fortify the defenses so that the town has a higher defense level, because the whole point is you're trying to defend from attacks on this town. So there's a lot of mechanics in almost a world building aspect, which is a little different, a new take on this campaign versus Gloomhaven. Other new changes include new enemies like the frozen corpses, which feature the brittle mechanic, living dooms, which can summon living spirits, and they feature the Bane status effect mechanic. There are now also polar bears and a whole bunch of other new enemies, which, speaking of enemies also, in addition to dropping money, now drop items, herbs, resources, and potentially other things as well. Now, I mentioned a couple new status effects like Brittle and Bane, and they're mostly just damage related status effects. So Brittle and Bane both, like Bane adds 10 damage, Brittle doubles the damage, so they're pretty minor in terms of the gameplay and their creativity, it feels like. But you know, that adds to the lore of the game. Brittle, when attacked by frost, you get brittle. That makes sense that you would take more damage. Another new thing that they're introducing is seasons. So Frosthaven, you instantly imagine you're in this winter wonderland, and you're up in the north, so of course there's gonna be more snow and a colder weather up there. However, there are seasons, both summer and winter, and Isaac has mentioned that it's gonna be shifting seasons about every 15 scenarios. And the seasons unlock new passageways that in the other season are blocked or unattainable, and it changes how cities function, or maybe the things that are available in those cities as well. So this entire world of Frosthaven is going to be shifting every 15 scenarios, and that number may change, but it seems like an interesting way to completely change what's happening in the current scenario. And it might push you to finish certain ones before you normally would, or to wait to start it until the summer comes. So that'll be an interesting way that you interact with the campaign and choose the scenarios that you're going to be working through. Another new item with Frosthaven is almost a secondary book, where it was described kind of like escape rooms. There'll be puzzles that you won't be able to, or you shouldn't be able to solve, and as you play through scenarios, you're getting hints and getting clues, so that you go back and find out that this makes a lot more sense now that you've completed this thing, or this story piece has been told, so that you can understand what's going on in these puzzles. It's not essential for completing the campaign, but it's an add-on. It's an interesting thing so that you can enjoy the lore and enjoy a different type of gameplay within the Frosthaven universe. One thing as well is that items can be crafted. This is different from just simply purchasing items before. So you can craft items out of things, out of resources that you've collected throughout the scenarios and that enemies have dropped. You can even combine your resources to craft an item with other characters in your campaign. However, only one character still can own the item. So even if you pitch in, maybe you're helping one of your players to get this ultimate weapon, only they get to play with it, which makes sense thematically, but you know, I always love getting weapons, so maybe I'll be that character, the tank that takes most of the hits and needs that really powerful weapon. If all this information is getting you just as excited as it is for me, know that the Kickstarter is planned to launch in March of 2020, and the fulfillment for it is going to be less than a year. They're expecting early 2021 to get these games fulfilled to the backers. I think Isaac's done a great job of choosing to keep the core of the game the same, but introducing a lot new story, a lot new scenarios, and enough new mechanics and different things to make it feel like a new experience and be super enticing for Gloomhaven fans like myself. You even get miniatures that he's saying they're upgrading the art and the feel to be more dynamic and fun. So that'll be something to look forward to, some great minis. Now, more information will be coming out about Frosthaven as development continues and as we approach the Kickstarter launch date. So make sure to subscribe if you want to hear all that as soon as possible. Also, what character are you most excited to play in Frosthaven? I'll be chatting in the comments below on Board Game Atlas and in the YouTube comments, so let me know what you think.